don't remember being born. You don't remember your first steps, learning what a dog was, or that exact moment you finally figured out your own hands actually belonged to you. I mean, those moments definitely happened. They were real, and you were absolutely there. But for almost everyone, everything before roughly age 3 is just gone. It exists in almost complete silence. So, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to investigate the ultimate mystery, the systematic near total erasure of the absolute most dramatic chapter of your entire existence. Okay, let's dive right into this by asking an obvious but honestly kind of unsettling question. Were you actually experiencing anything worth remembering back then? Was the projector even on? It's a completely fair question, right? Because if there was no real conscious experience happening, well, there'd be nothing to remember in the first place. But the answer is a resounding, undeniable yes. Just think about the incredible capabilities infants have right out of the gate. Within hours of birth, babies recognize their mother's voice from the womb. Give them a few days, and they're already showing a clear preference for faces they've seen before. They even use distinctly different cries, depending on whether they're hungry, in pain, or just feeling lonely. So yeah, there was absolutely someone home. A real, rich experience of consciousness was present from the very beginning. And yet, all of it vanished. To understand why it all vanished, we have to rethink what memory actually is. We all tend to think of memory like a video camera, right? You hit record, and a single, nice, cohesive little video clip is saved on a hard drive in your brain. But that's entirely wrong. Memory is actually way more like a scattered puzzle. When something happens to you, the emotional feeling goes to one part of your brain, the sensory details like smell and sight go to another, and the actual sequence of events goes somewhere else entirely. For you to have a memory you can pull up later, all those scattered pieces have to be actively linked together. Now, that linking process requires a highly specific brain structure called the hippocampus. Think of it as the brain's master memory indexer. But here's the catch. With human development at birth, that hippocampal network is dramatically underdeveloped. It's functionally incomplete. It really isn't until you hit age 2 or 3 that significant connection building takes off, and it honestly keeps developing all the way into adolescence. So an infant experiencing the world is essentially operating a camera without a memory card. The lens works perfectly, the processor's running hot, but there is literally nowhere for the footage to go, so a cohesive narrative memory never forms. But, an immature hippocampus is only the first piece of this puzzle. There's a second biological suspect at play here called neurogenesis. This is the continuous generation of brand new neurons in the brain. For a long time, scientists actually thought we were born with all the neurons we'd ever have. But nope, we grow new ones continuously. In infants, though, this generation happens at an extraordinarily high rate. I mean, a rate that simply does not happen in adults. And every single one of those new neurons has to aggressively wire itself into the existing system. Which brings us to a massive biological trade-off. Imagine a chaotic, super busy library where hundreds of new bookshelves are being shoved into the building every single day. The books, which are your experiences, are being added way faster than they can possibly be cataloged. And because the shelves themselves keep moving around to make room for the new ones, the old filing system gets completely wrecked. This explosive neurogenesis means the infant brain is hyper-optimized for incredible learning capacity. It's absorbing information at maximum speed. But the steep cost of that speed is memory consolidation. You're biologically trading away the ability to file stable experiences for decades later just so you can learn how to survive today. So the hardware issues, the hippocampus and all that crazy neurogenesis, that's fascinating, but it isn't the whole story. And this brings us to a really crucial focus for our explainer today. The most profound key to this entire mystery is actually the cognitive software of language. Now, it sounds super simple to just say, well, babies can't form verbal memories because they don't have words yet, but it goes so much deeper than that. Language and memory share an incredibly intimate structural connection. Language acts as the essential cognitive scaffold needed to build your sense of self. Imagine how this progression actually unfolds in your mind. When you remember something from your past, you are internally narrating it, aren't you? You're constructing a sequence of events with yourself as the main character. Well, as infants, we start at step 1, a purely present tense self. We just have sensory, right here, right now experiences. But to get to step 3, that autobiographical I that can stretch backward through time and say, this happened to me, we absolutely have to pass through step 2, language acquisition. Without the framework of words, you literally do not have the cognitive tools to build a personal history. There's a quote from our sources that perfectly captures the absolute heart of this mystery. Without language, there's no story. Without a story, there's no narrator. And without a narrator, there's no subject of the memory.
Think about that for a second. You cannot consciously remember that I was there if you don't yet have a stable language-built concept of what I even is. Remembering is narrating, and until you download that cognitive software of language, there's no cohesive I to anchor your experiences in time.
And the data overwhelmingly backs up this language link. For example, studies consistently show that children who develop language later in life also experience a later onset of their first autobiographical memories. It's also fascinating that bilingual children usually have their absolute clearest early memories in whatever language they were using at the time the event happened. And beautifully, people who learned sign language as their very first language show the exact same amnesia patterns as hearing children. This proves it's not about physically speaking words out loud. It's about language as a foundational cognitive system. Words don't just express our memories, they literally build the scaffolding for them. Which brings us to a rather uncomfortable twist. You might be sitting there thinking, wait a minute, I totally have an incredibly vivid memory from when I was just 1 or 2 years old. Well, if we've established that you need a developed hippocampus and the cognitive scaffold of language to actually store a memory, what exactly is that early memory of yours? Is your very first memory a lie? Okay, I know this is deeply unsettling to hear, but memory research documents this heavily. Many of our absolute earliest memories are not genuine experiential traces, meaning you aren't actually recalling the direct original event. Instead, what you have is a socially reinforced reconstruction. Think about it. Over the years, you've seen a Polaroid of your second birthday party. You've heard your parents tell that funny story of you smashing the cake a dozen times. Eventually, your brain takes those external stories, builds a vivid mental representation, and then misfiles it in the exact same brain folder as your real memories. It feels perfectly, 100% real to you. But sorry to break it to you, it's very often a complete fabrication. Now, while the average onset for reliable memory is right around 3.5 years old, there is definitely a wide range. So why do some people genuinely remember things a bit earlier? Well, it turns out memory is actually partly a social skill. In cultures where parents do a lot of collaborative reminiscing, constantly asking their kids, hey, remember when we went to the park and did this? Those children actually develop autobiographical memories earlier. Gender socialization around talking about emotions plays a big role too. And finally, intense emotional stress or fear can leave traces much earlier, simply because our brain's primal emotional alarm system, the amygdala, develops way before the hippocampus does. We also really need to talk about sleep, specifically the number 18. Infants sleep up to 18 hours a day. Now, for a long time, scientists kind of brushed this off as just a weird biological quirk of babies. But it turns out infants aren't sleeping that much just to save discrete little memory files of their day. They're actually sleeping that much to install the fundamental operating system of reality itself. All those waking experiences they do have, they aren't being turned into conscious narrative stories. Instead, they're being processed into deep architecture. For instance, you don't remember the specific Tuesday afternoon you figured out that physical objects are solid and gravity exists, or the exact day you learned how to automatically scan a human face to figure out if someone is angry or happy. You just know it. That massive amount of data was used to build your foundational capabilities, rather than being filed away as a cute story you could tell later at a dinner party. Which finally brings us to the resolution of our mystery, and honestly, perhaps the most important concept we're covering today: implicit memory. This is the deep knowledge, the emotional reflexes, and the ways of moving through the world that live entirely inside your nervous system, and they operate completely below your conscious awareness. Infantile amnesia might have wiped out your explicit story-like memories, but it left your implicit memories completely intact. You forgot the specific experiences, sure, but your body kept the lessons. Those unremembered years silently built your invisible foundation. If you were consistently comforted when you cried as a baby, your nervous system learned at a deeply biological level that distress is temporary and help is real. If you weren't, your body calibrated itself to expect a cold, unreliable world. These early, erased years forged your attachment patterns, your knee-jerk emotional reflexes, and even your completely unexplainable fears. All of this underlying code is actively running your life today, and it's completely invisible to your conscious mind. And it goes even beyond your own direct experiences. You actually absorbed an implicit emotional inheritance from your caregivers. This inheritance was passed down to you not as explicit teachings or sit-down lectures, but as the psychological atmosphere you breathed every single day before you even had a single word to describe it. Underlying anxiety patterns and default expectations of the world were handed from generation to generation,
quietly shaping the architecture of your brain before you were ever aware you were absorbing them.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to consider. The very first years of your life shaped you more than almost any years that followed. You just weren't allowed to keep the receipts. But if your very foundation is constructed from erased experiences, and the earliest memories you hold on to so tightly are mostly just borrowed stories from photographs and family lore, what does that actually mean for who you are? It's a wildly fascinating question, and one I'm going to leave you to sit with today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, and as always,